Hi everyone, welcome to my shows, My Steps to Sobriety, with your host Stefan Neff. And today is a fantastic day because I have got a beautiful guest here. I have got Dr. Feelgood. Well, actually, that would have been the introduction before 2003 when Natalie Forstbauer, unfortunately, was involved in a motor vehicle accident. And from a coach who was passionate about her work, she ended up a very different person after her motor vehicle accident. And I'm so delighted to have her on my show today to explore her journey with her and to show the remarkable transformation that she has undergone, the lessons she has learned, and in turn, all the beautiful lessons that you guys out there can learn from Natalie and her journey. So without further ado, Natalie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my honor to be here with you today, Stefan.
Oh,
Yeah.
my. You have always been very passionate about your life and about helping others. So if
This
we
is
were
true.
to go around the 2000s, how was your life then? What did you get up to?
Well, I there's a number of things. One is I geeked out on computers and technology, so I was diving into the world of online marketing and what that looked like, and teaching myself how to code, doing some HTML and PHP, and then I also was launching my career as a professional speaker, and I just finished writing a book in 2002, 2003, and I created an online membership site, which back then I had online videos and online Ask the Expert interviews, which is what we would call podcasts today, right? And I was really committed to spreading the word of how to be healthy when people really had no time, because there was an illusion that I saw within my clients that I was working with, is that they didn't have time to do the things that they thought they had to do to be healthy. And I was noticing that it's actually the little things we do every day that brings us deeper health. It's not going out and like running 10 miles once a week or going to the gym all of a sudden and then quitting. It's the little habits that we create. So that's what inspired my first book, Health in a Hurry, which is the book that I wrote in 2003.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I, throughout this talk, I can't help myself but drawing parallels between your journey and my journey, because that was what initially struck me so much, how the lessons we both learned, me from a chronic brain injury called alcoholism, and you from an acute brain injury, were essentially identical. And I've just released my book, My Steps to Sobriety. And in there is a huge chapter of exactly the small habits, the need to address the basics, and making conscious decisions to head the right way every second, every minute of your day. So here you were, when I was still so busy with my crazy rat race that I was in. At that
Yeah.
time, you already had seen the light, because that was
Mhm.
around 2000, and you already had written a book, which I had
Mhm.
the pleasure of looking into. So
Mm.
it's actually gorgeous there. So there
Thank
you
you.
were with all those beautiful things that we now take for granted, but must have been quite a
Mhm.
trendsetter in 2000. Who would have thought about all these things that we now take for granted? You were
Mhm.
on the pulse of things, weren't you?
Yeah, I really felt like I was really living my life in purpose and on purpose and super intentionally, and it was I at the time of the accident, at the time of the injury, I really felt like I was living living my dream life, with my career. I had an amazing partner. We had an organic farm together as well. And I just published my first book, was published in 2 other books, and had this online membership site, was getting booked on as a keynote speaker, 6 months, 2 years in
Beautiful.
advance. And so
Wow.
to land with a brain injury was really curious.
Hmm. Can you remember the day of the accident?
Well, I remember um, I remember starting to drive out to BC, because we were in Saskatchewan, which is in central Canada, and BC is about 2,000 kilometers away.
A
And
little morning trip for you.
that's right. So, and it's where my book launch was, because I was in the process of moving out to Saskatchewan to be with my partner and have this organic farm and beautiful life together. And we were picking up my books on the way to the book launch, in like halfway through in Calgary. And then we picked up the books, and I have little snapshots of the excitement of picking up the books, but I
Oh,
don't actually remember
mm,
that those transactions.
mm,
So I don't know that I don't remember the day of, but I there's pieces.
mm.
I remember having this amazing pizza, like picking up amazing pizza on the way out of town as well.
Isn't it amazing what the brain uh, registers as really important and lays
Yes.
down so deep in the foundations that even a big knock on the head doesn't get rid of it. How beautiful
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah.
There's certainly worse memories you could have come up with, honestly.
This is true. Yeah, this is true.
Okay, so then blank. Someone switches off the
Yeah.
lights. What
Hmm.
was the first thing you can remember when the lights went back on?
Mm. That was a really, uh, it was a really tender moment, because w- I hear about people talking about near death experiences, and I haven't, this is the first time I've publicly talked about this, Stefan. No one's put this question in front of me in public before.
And please feel
So
free if you do not wish to talk about it. This is absolutely
yeah.
fine.
Oh, thanks for that permission. I appreciate it. And I'm going to answer it. I've written about it in a memoir that I'm working on, um, that walks through the brain injury. So when I first came back, um, everything around me was white and my skin was tingling. And I can remember, like, it was just this tingling sensation, and it was really bright white. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, and then all of a sudden I see these tall, dark pillars. And I was like, I don't remember that in heaven. Like, that was my first thought. I was like, I don't remember that wherever I was, heaven or the ethers, or I'm not too sure where. And then, and then I saw Dave, who was my partner at the time, and then I knew I wasn't in heaven. And I don't mean that like, it was just, I knew that I was back on earth.
Oh, poor Dave.
I know, right? And it wasn't a negative thing. I was like, oh, because where I was, it was different. It was a
Yes.
different experience. And then I realized, like, I don't know if it was months or years later, I realized the dark pillars that I saw were trees, because there was a light snowfall, and where we had the accident, and the roof of the truck was peeled back, and and I had been thrown under the dash of the truck, and so I had crawled up, I guess, onto the seat, um and that's my first memory. It was just white
Mm,
and wondering where I was.
mm,
And I knew Dave was someone important to me, but I didn't know who he was. Like, I
mm,
knew he was someone important to me, but I didn't know his name. I didn't know our relationship. I didn't know
mm,
my name. I didn't know who I was. I had no idea I was on the way to my book launch.
mm.
Yeah.
That must have been, well, probably at the time, it probably wasn't scary because these were the moments when when your brain tries to figure out what's going on, you don't understand the fullness, the reality, the implications. Your brain just gets these few impulses that it has and tries to figure out, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Did you, when the ambulance came, they obviously took care of you, took you to the hospital. Did you have to be in intensive care? Did you end up in an induced coma, or did you?
No, no. I just had, you can see it maybe a little tiny bit. You can see my a little scar
Yeah,
there on my
yeah.
forehead. I call it my I am Canadian hockey stick, or L for live, love, laugh, and life.
Excellent.
So they stitched that up, and I was just at the end of um, the first trimester of a pregnancy
Mm,
at the time of the accident, and ended up in a really small hospital where they didn't have the facilities to check that out. So they sent me to another hospital, and which was totally overcrowded, and to diagnose me with a head injury, and put me in a closet, literally, or in the hallway, and Dave was like, "There's no way she's staying here,"
mm,
and I had family in town, and so they sent him home with um, protocol to watch for, and to check on me regularly for swelling in my face, and I mean the list goes on and on and on, and so no, they just sent me home. It was a closed head injury.
mm.
Yeah.
Goodness. Um, and fair call. There's no way that I can comment on that as a doctor or as an anesthetist who was used to intensive care.
Mm-hmm.
We only saw the really bad cases where we then helped by sending these cases off to sleep for a day or two to help their brain uh, reduce its demand on oxygen and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I myself am very happy with the management of closed head injury, but of course I have no idea how you presented at the time. And obviously my
Right.
colleagues would have thought she is not as bad. And that's
Mm-hmm.
good. That's good. Please, let's not be silly. So at the time of it all happening, it didn't seem to be so bad for my medical colleagues. But when I listen to your TEDx talk and uh, try to peel back the mask and try to look at the real you, there was a huge impact of your traumatic brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy to talk about that? Are you happy to talk about
Yeah,
the
I'd
next
love to
year
dive
or
in.
two?
Yes, for sure.
Go for it.
Let's go.
How
Oh, you
was
want
it?
me to share? Well, it was shocking, really, because I went from a super high functioning human to somebody who couldn't remember how to use a stove. So I knew a stove was for cooking with, but I couldn't remember how to use it. I knew a chair was for sitting on, but I couldn't remember what it was called. And Dave would joke around that communicating with me was like playing charades. Because there's and finding words was really difficult, right? They call that aphasia. And
Hmm.
so the first, I'd say, year was actually probably more confusing. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall, because I have memories of making a squash soup, for example, and getting up in the morning and starting, cutting onions and peeling squash. And my typical experience of that is I could probably knock that out in about 20 minutes. But I remember uh, doing activities like that, and it would be like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was still peeling squash. Like, how is that possible? And I would be so, I couldn't figure it out. And then there'd be other experiences where I was a part of a couple of masterminds, and um, I just kept missing the meetings, like over and over and over again. And I would put reminders on, and um, and they still wouldn't work. And and it got to the point where I recognized that I was missing these meetings, and so I'd sit with a uh, the phone on my knee. It would be, the meeting would be at 9 o'clock, and I'd sit at 8:45. I'd be like, okay, Natalie, you're not moving until you are on that phone, and then you're not moving. You're staying here. You're sitting here. And this is almost 2 years after post injury, and I'm sitting there staring at the phone, and then all of a sudden, 45 minutes later, the phone is ringing, and it's the author circle, and they're saying, Natalie, where are you? Are you joining us? And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I even putting in protocol to ensure, strategies to help myself fix or move through the things that I was noticing, they weren't even working. And so then we changed the strategy. They called me for the meetings. So we found ways around them, but it was just odd because I also landed in Saskatchewan and I was from BC, so nobody knew me, really knew me before I had the injury. And I was working with doctors who were like, well, in time things will change. And I was also working with a vulnerable situation because Dave was driving at the time of the accident, and so he felt responsible for
Mm.
the brain injury.
Mm.
And the challenging part of that is neither of us really knew what we were dealing with, Stefan. So I would go into the doctor with a list of things that I would notice that were challenging, like not being able to remember things, can't remember what things are called, missing meetings. I mean, the list was kind of long, and I'd go in and I'd go through the list with the doctor, and I'd come out and Dave would just be all kind of tense, and he'd be like, you didn't tell him everything. And I'm like, what do you mean I didn't tell him everything? I went through the list. He's like, and he'd just sit there and shake his head and be so frustrated. But what I didn't know, and I didn't learn until almost 5 years post injury, was that I was having the same conversation multiple times with him and not realizing it.
Ah. So your short-term memory was severely affected.
That's right. Yeah.
Were
And
there
I had no clue.
were there times that you walked into the kitchen, put the oven on or put something onto the stove, then walked out and the alarms went off when everything was smoking?
Oh, often I boiled pots dry. I learned to only cook on the front two burners. I
Mm.
never, I just learned certain strategies or maybe it was two back. I don't remember, but
Mm.
um,
No.
I just put in safety, and also I also learned to never leave anything on the stove and always check it.
Mm.
So because otherwise
Mm.
it was too vulnerable.
Isn't
Because
it?
I would leave things. I would leave the stove on randomly. It would just be turned on, and I walk in, and the burner would be red hot. And I think, and I honestly thought other people were doing it. I really, really did. I
Oh.
I was pointing fingers all the time because I was a person who remembered everything. I was a person who um, I wasn't organized, but I was on top of things. So
Oh, wow.
there's no way
Wow.
it was me.
Yeah, no, it's this, please. I have seen many cases like that, and it is so frustrating, especially for someone like you who has been so highly functioning and proud of her mental acuity, of her abilities, of her sharpness.
Mhm. Yeah.
I feel for you. This must have been such a frustrating time.
Well,
Boy.
it was frustrating, and it was also very curious, Stefan. It was frustrating because my training was in complementary medicine and mindfulness and thought awareness. And so I really believe that if I um, worked hard enough, that I would be able to heal myself. Like I really, really believe that if I ate the right foods and if I thought, if I be the change you want to see in the world, that kind of thing. I really believe that if I could rearrange how I was experiencing what my perspective of was things, that I could fix myself, then I would be better.
And to a certain degree, in the bigger scheme of things, you were actually right. Just not the way you wanted that, because you sound actually, with all due respect, you sound like a man. There's a problem. I'm going to fix it. We're going to be fine. Let's move on.
That's right. That's right.
So there's a bit of a Y chromosome hiding in you.
And with all due respect, I think I did go at a talk one time. I was listening to a counselor, and it was a man, and he was talking about how men think and how women think, and he described me to a T, and I was like, oh, so I'm a man now, like post brain injury. I totally think and process like a man, so I can say I actually get you, but
take
do
that as an
not.
honorary title, okay?
Thanks. Yeah.
So, okay. Now,
Hmm.
listeners, viewers, you can imagine the person you would have talked to if you had met Natalie in 2005, 2006? There would have been a very different Natalie in front of you. Probably at times confused Natalie, a woman who looks at you maybe at times angry because she thinks, I've just told you that, or I have not done that. What, there is all kind of confused feelings, and with that comes a lack of confidence. You self-doubt yourself constantly. You develop your own mannerisms because you have to check and recheck and then check again. So all that would have been a very, very, very different person than I interview now. What the hell has happened to turn you around? How did you become this beautiful person now, the Natalie Forstbauer version 2.0, that is out there and kicking ass despite what has happened, or probably because what has happened to you? But what happened? What did you do?
Well, I think a couple things happened. I'm just going to back it up a little bit, if that's okay, Stefan,
Of course.
So there was another really poignant interaction that I had, and this was, I'm not too sure exactly how far post brain injury, but it was a couple of years for sure. And I had been in Saskatchewan for a while, and maybe it was in the first year. Regardless, I was at an event with Dave, and we were talking to another couple, and he didn't introduce me to them, and I was furious because I felt like this was happening over and over and over again. And I think the polite thing to do is you introduce your girlfriend to people, right? That's what you do. So I interrupt the conversation. And literally, I'm like, I apologize for interrupting. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Natalie Forstbauer. And they're like, yeah, we've met. And I was like, we've met? Because in my head, I remember everyone I meet, like everyone. And I remember how many kids you had, where you grew up, like what you did last weekend, what our conversation was about. And I had no recollection of these people. And I said, are you sure? And I'm thinking, I know Dave's girlfriend before me had blonde hair, so I'm pretty sure. And I'm like, we're together a lot, so I'm pretty sure he's not with anybody else. And so these are the thoughts that are going through my head. And they say, oh no, yeah, we met on Saturday at like at church and at the school fair. And I could see that they were being really truthful. And I looked at Dave and I was like, is that right, Dave? And he was like, and I was like, oh, that's weird. That's really weird. And that was one of the moments where my life fell apart, literally.
I like the sound effects. You did
Thank
that
you
well.
very much. I know.
First quiet and then the explosion. Wow. I mean,
that's impressive, right?
I'm impressed.
Oh, yeah. That must have been the cats tuning into the energy of it. It was at that, but that's what happened on the inside for me. I crumbled. I fell apart. I was like, well, who am I? Because I'm not remembering people that I meet. Like I thought I was this person and now I'm showing up as this person. So what is that? And I don't even like the new person I'm showing up as, because now I'm not reliable. I don't show up. I'm not healthy anymore. Like, who is that person? That was hard. So fast forward. So 2003 was the accident. In 2008, I also decided to have 3 kids in 3 years, 3.5 years. 2008, I had, thank you, yeah.
No, I'm just thinking mummy brain plus traumatic brain injury.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing, Stefan, because some people were like, well, it's mummy brain. And I was like, well, okay. And I'm also the only person I know whose memory is improving throughout the pregnancy. So sure, I might have mummy brain, But
Priceless. Priceless.
but I'm telling you, I can remember more this week than I remembered last week. And so I had this healing process that was happening during the pregnancies. And sure, I also acknowledge that there must be mummy brain stuff going on. And at the same time, I really believe that the pregnancies healed like lots of different pieces of the brain injury, which we won't dive into in this conversation. But um, I remember being I'm also the oldest of 12 children and grew up in doing summer camps and counseling and doing all those fun things. So, and coaching. And so my skills I had mad skills when it came to looking after kids and um, playing games with them, doing the ABCs. I couldn't even remember how you were saying the ABC song. I got it mixed up all the time. It was crazy making. And so anyways, it's 2008 and I have these 3 little kids and my life is literally falling apart around me. And I had been told I had a brain injury, but I really was pretty sure that the doctors were wrong all the way along. That was another problem. and I noticed like I noticed I needed help. And that was my like come to Natalie moment,
You've
when I
just
knew.
described alcoholism in a
Yeah.
tea. You need help. No, I don't. I'm fully in control. It's absolutely fine. Yeah,
Right.
right. Excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
you be I'm so humbled listening to you. It's no
Mm.
longer true. So that was 2008.
Yeah.
And you felt, wow, enough is enough. But it's one thing to feel like that, and
Mm.
then one thing to find a way forward.
That's right. And so that's when I changed. I really started to change my story to I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to make the best of this to what can I do today? Like, what can I do today? What can I do when I wake up?
Beautiful,
Because that's all I
beautiful.
had to go
Ah,
on.
beautiful.
Yeah. So that's it changed my life. I mean, because up until that point, I was trying to do and recapture everything that I had done and been before. And it gave me permission to just wake up and like I made my goal, my priorities while looking after myself and loving my kids because I was told that all kids need is love and food and shelter. So those became my number one jobs, just to make sure they were loved and that they were fed.
Hmm.
And anything I did above and beyond that was golden. Like anything I did above and beyond that, Stefan, I just was like icing on the cake. So I really had to dial back my commitments and my life and my perspective of what I thought I wanted to do, who I thought I wanted to be. Mm.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Amen.
Uh, Serenity
Yeah.
prayer fits to a T to both most of to all alcoholics, to all addicts, and now I've
Mm-hmm.
learned also to all sufferers from traumatic brain injuries.
I
And
think so.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful how you described that. It must have been quite a sense of relief for you once you actually gave yourself permission to no longer be that perfect human being in your mind, or that perfect human being that you perceived yourself to be in 2003 before the accident.
That's right. Yeah. It's funny because I mean, there's such an illusion that happens, right? Of who we perceive ourselves to be. Like, I know that there were a lot of things that I was not great at before the accident. And at the same time, I really felt good about the things that I was good at and who I was and how I was showing up. And so, and I liked that person and I liked those parts of myself. So I was so hungry for them. And because I thought she brought value to the world. And
Yeah. And she
and
probably did. She probably did in
yeah,
her own way. But
that's right.
yeah. But the new version
Yeah.
2.0 is so much more powerful. I mean, you are Terminator reincarnated. You are the
That's right.
kick-ass girl by
Mm,
simply showing what a new path for a person can mean, and
mm-hmm.
that if one door closes and another opens, yeah, probably your house is haunted, but it also means that you actually can, in the most beautiful way, can get on with your life and
Yeah.
become such a beautiful being, just a being that you never knew would be there. That
Mm-hmm.
is, and that is what we are facing here today with you. It's
Mm-hmm.
gorgeous, absolutely
Mm,
fantastic.
thank
But how
you.
did you get there? How did you get there? You realized in
Yeah.
2008 there is something not right, and you suddenly there was this uh, for the lack of a better word, divine moment where you had the
Mm-hmm.
insight to say, okay, enough is enough. I can't chase ghosts. I can't keep going with what I'm doing, because for 5 years that hasn't really made me a very happy person, rather a confused person and probably a bit of an anxious person, because you did not
Yeah.
achieve what you could, or what you wanted to.
That's right.
Then suddenly there was the relief, and you took each moment by its own grace. You
Mm-hmm.
started living in the moment, literally. What you had told other people to do in your book
That's
prior to
right.
the injury, you suddenly actually practiced. Hey,
Yeah. Amazing how that works, isn't
yes,
it?
it.
Yeah, that's yeah, Eckhart Tolle, his book, I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's Living in the Now or something like that, right? And I joke like brain, that is one of the gifts of the brain injury, is it really brings a person to the present.
Mm,
And one of the challenges of a brain injury can also be that we're always trying to find the past, find our memory, and find the future, find what we want to
yeah,
do or
yeah.
where we want to go. And when really that is probably one of the most profound gifts, is the ability to really presence myself with whatever's right in front of me. And because I don't have the capacity, or now even want a lot of the time, to be holding the context of the past, or to be
Mm,
holding the wishes for the future. I like to
mm,
hold the intentions for the future, but not the,
mm,
like, those attachments.
mm,
But a couple of things that were really powerful that I did was, I just really gave myself permission to, I I guess, like a person could say, hold my own hand. So rather than beating myself up and making myself wrong for everything that I no longer was, I just learned to kind of meet myself where I was, and go,
mm,
and just like hold, and to hold my heart really tenderly, and be like, both okay with where I was at, and loving towards myself, right? Because I had been so hard on myself for everything I no longer was, and that was crippling.
mm. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, that insight. You were always loving the presence, or the present, shall I say, when
Mm,
you were gardening. You had an organic farm, and your
yeah,
hands were in the soil. Your hands were
yeah.
touching plants all the time.
Hmm.
And I guess here that this was your grounding place, that this was where you felt at home,
Hmm.
where you were, was that your happy place?
For sure it was. I had an organic farm out in the prairies with the children's dad, and it was a grain farm. So there's not a lot of hands in the dirt, but I had made
Mm,
my own garden, and that was
mm.
very funny because nothing worked in it except for the tomatoes and tomatoes.
I was
That was
about to
it.
say,
Like,
Canada and organic farm does not necessarily sort of gel. Do you hack the
well,
ice before you put the seeds in, or
come
how does it
on.
work?
You need to come to Canada. There's lots of beautiful, hot, sunny days here in different parts of the world.
Yeah, all three of them. Yeah, that's right.
Right. Oh man. Um, but anyway, so um, in 2009, 2010, so this is 7 years post brain injury,
Mm.
I ended up back in BC, and my marriage had disintegrated, and I had three little kids and I needed support. I needed support for the brain injury. I needed support being a mom with them, and my family was all out in BC. So I ended up moving back there, and my parents had an organic vegetable and blueberry farm that I was raised on, and so I would go over there and work on the farm, just little bits. And um, I remembered not being able to remember how to plant a garden when I was out in Saskatchewan. The shock, but I didn't have to worry about weeding because nothing except for the tomatoes, which were already a foot high when I planted them, grew. But when I was out in BC, there's acres and acres and acres of organic vegetables. And so you sit down on your butt or on your hands and knees, and you weed the little carrots and you weed the little beets. And I remember going out to weed the carrots and looking at the row, and I was like, I can't tell the carrots from the weeds. And it wasn't only that I couldn't tell the carrots from the weeds, but it was exhausting trying to figure it out. And I grew up doing this stuff, so I should have been able to do it like
Mm.
with like no problem. So um, I quickly learned that that was not a good job for me, and that I would do second or third weedings, which is where you can really see the carrots and there's not very many weeds. And so you pull out the bigger weeds. And so um, I, so I use those exercises as brain exercises, right? Because I knew that if I was having a hard time doing them, that they were probably good for me. And I learned to only do them for as long as until I was tired, because I also had little kids to look after. So maybe I'd only meet for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, or
Mm.
maybe half an hour, if that's how long my mental alertness would last for. So I was doing things like that. And then I started growing dahlias. And when I first started growing dahlias, I was noticing that I actually couldn't, like, I grew a lot of different colors of dahlias. And so if I was picking purple flowers, and then the next flowers were pink, and I knew there was other colors of flowers behind the purple flowers, but I wouldn't be able to remember, like, so mixing the flowers, in pretty bunches, like pinks with oranges or pinks with purples. I was noticing I actually couldn't remember. I couldn't remember which flowers were where in the field, and it was 2 rows. So it wasn't like it was hard. And so I was like, this is really interesting too. And then as the years passed, Stefan, I noticed that I was able to remember that there were red flowers with pointy petals, and then there was red flowers with round petals, and then there was purple flowers that had pink in them and purple flowers that had orange in them. And I was like, whoa, oh my gosh, I'm able to remember things. So the farming and gardening became not only restoration and healing for my brain, but it also became touch points for me being able to notice how my brain was kind of rewiring and waking up. And it was fascinating to witness and to experience. And I mean, I have so many different examples of that, and then, so here's the most interesting part is I moved to Saskatchewan just this last fall, and it's now 2020. So the accident was 18 years ago. And I decided to dig up an acre and a half of land. And my kids are kicking and screaming. They're like 14, 13, and 12. And my 14-year-old, yeah, right? You can imagine how happy they are. So my 14-year-old, he's lit up. He's like, why do you have to do this anyways? And he's like, I understand that you want to grow your own food, but this much, do you know how much work this is? And I was like, yeah, it's quite a bit of work, isn't it? I'm looking around at 5,000 strawberry plants and
Yes,
yeah,
my kind of woman. Yes.
right. And I'm like, but the great part of the conversation, Stefan, was I realized why I wanted to do it. And it's because it had been such a big part of my healing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is how I have like woke up. This is how my brain has woke up to being able to have this conversation with you, and being able to notice what I notice and feel what I feel and do what I do. So it's powerful.
And it's so beautiful because as doctors, and in actual fact, me as a doctor, thinking I know it all, have just learned such a powerful thing from you. Because in my mind, whatever you are at 1 year after a brain injury, I thought that was it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I whilst the neuroplasticity of the brain is very much something I understand, I didn't appreciate to which degree it keeps working and doing its beautiful, beautiful magic.
Mm-hmm.
Because thinking, well, 2003 to 2020, 17, 18 years now, and you continue to make improvements, you continue to work. But I guess to a certain degree, what I've just said is so important. Let's stress that word, work. You
Mm-hmm.
keep working, you keep
Mm-hmm.
practicing,
Mm-hmm.
you don't just sit there and said, oh, well, that's it. No, you keep working. And I love the curiosity that you bring to the whole game. You are not, well, mind you, I haven't even asked you that. What I was about to say is you're not throwing pity parties, but
Mm.
it can't have been all roses or dahlias in this
No.
case, or strawberries.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so there must have been
uh
pity parties somewhere along the line.
yeah, there are a lot of dark days, Stefan. I referenced the author's circle earlier, and probably around the time that we were noticing that I just was not able to show up to the meetings, I was in, or part of being part of a mastermind. I don't know if you've been part of masterminds before, is you're working, like you're working on different projects, and you're committed, and you're showing up, and you're supportive of the other people in the mastermind. And I would keep making these goals. I'm going to send out press releases to these people, because I had a book tour that I had planned before the event, and I had radio shows and TV programs to be on. And I went on a couple of them. I couldn't even remember what my book was about. It was super frustrating. They'd
Oh,
ask me questions, and I'd be like,
hmm.
just shoveling, like I, I just kind of like tried to piece it together. So anyways, with the authors circle, there was a point where I didn't feel worthy to be in the group anymore, because I wasn't contributing. I couldn't show up for myself, let alone them. Like I couldn't even remember the projects that they were working on.
Hmm.
And they said, Natalie, what do you need? What do you need from us? And I said, I need a babysitter. And they said, a babysitter? Like for your stepkids? Because we had stepkids who came and spent a week with us every second week. And I was like, no, for myself. And they said, what do you mean by that? And I was like, well, I'm really struggling. Like, and I am falling apart. I can barely get these words out of my mouth. I'm struggling right now. And through some coaching and conversation, we identified that they would each take a turn calling me every single day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And, I needed that to get through those days, because I didn't know how I'd get through those days,
Hmm.
because they were so hard. Like, I didn't know who I was anymore. Yeah.
Wow.
So every day they called just to say hi. Hey, Natalie, how you doing? And I look forward to those calls every day. And I'm sure, like, working through um, sobriety, and I think working through trauma, period, um, those types of um, support and people showing up for you is life changing.
Is it not? Is it not? The you,
Yeah, and
sorry.
yeah, I was just gonna say, it almost feels like minimizing it. It's calling it life saving, but it's because it's so much more than that. It's like it's really the foundation and the threads of connection.
Isn't it? Connection. It's the human connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to show someone that you care. It can be that little smile, or that
Mm-hmm.
little, how are you doing? Or that
Mm-hmm.
little, I remember I went into rehab 7 years ago, round about there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty broken and out and down when I got a message that someone will be visiting me one Sunday. And I was quite surprised, and I didn't know who would
Mm-hmm.
turn up. And
Yeah.
it was someone that I would have never considered doing that. And it was the
Mm-hmm.
only person who ever sort of showed his face. And he was a colleague of mine who had his own demons, his own battles with
Mm-hmm.
alcohol, and he just came along for half an hour on a Sunday. So he drove 3 hours to get to me, sit with
Mm-hmm.
me half an hour, and then drove back
Wow.
3 hours. And I was stunned. I
Mm.
did not see that coming. And
Mm-hmm.
whilst it was flabbergasting at the time, it is to this day, I remember that for
Mm-hmm.
the powerful gesture that it was
Mm.
to go out of your way and to tell someone in not a big words, but just by
Mm-hmm.
being there to tell them you
Yeah.
appreciate them and love them and you care about them. And
Yeah.
that's such a powerful, powerful, powerful thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just showing up.
Oh, thank you, and I'm very sorry that I made you cry here, but this is
No, that's okay. That's, I think, I think that's, it's for sure vulnerable. And at the same time, I think it's okay. It's okay to have those tender moments and to just be uncomfortable and comfortable in the uncomfortable. And this, because that's what we have to learn to do. Because otherwise, there's a lot of hiding going on. There's a lot of, well, I guess people call it posturing, one of the words.
call it what you like. I know exactly what you mean, and it is so common out there in the day of Facebook and Messenger and Instagram and being having the perfect makeup and the perfect pose. Things
Right?
like that, it is just no, to actually see you and see a tear on your cheek is the most beautiful and the most humbling thing that I as a host could imagine. So I'm so grateful for your honesty, and I'm grateful for the insights that you share with me who is essentially a stranger, and with hopefully thousands of other strangers out
Right.
there who are probably all in a quite vulnerable position for one reason or the other.
Hmm.
But it is, I think, your journey shows us that there is hope, that there is a way out, even in the darkest moment when you can't see it,
Hmm.
even when you think everything is lost. And
Hmm.
that must have been the feeling when the doctors told you, "Ah, well, just give it some time and you're going to be right, and if not, oh well, so what." um it is,
Yeah,
I
that's
can
right.
sense the frustration that you had at that moment in time.
That's
And
right. Yeah. Yeah, I apologize for cutting you off. It just reminded me of something you said earlier, is that because that was the story in the beginning. And then when I started to see the specialists and they were saying, "Oh, Natalie, you have a brain injury." And I'm like, "A brain what?" And then they told me I had a brain injury. And I was like, "Oh, what does that mean?" And so they tried to tell me. Of course, I didn't listen. And I said, "Well, I'll get better. Watch me." Like, watch me. And literally, those are my conversations with the neurologists and stuff. And then I met another neurologist or neuropsychologist in Vancouver, and who was like, oh, one of the best. And he told me that where I was at was the best I was going to be. And that was in 2008, just before I was brought to my knees and the world fell apart. And I was going somewhere with this, and that um, I'm not too sure where I was going with that, but
No,
it was that the illusion was that I would get better, and then I was told that I wasn't going to get better, right? And then the learning was that um, whether I get better or don't get better isn't, like, healing isn't fixing what we perceive to be broken.
beautiful. Fucking beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Oh, wow. I regret a lot of conversations that I had as a doctor, where I tried
Mm.
to tell patients that it is what it is, kind of a thing. And I would love to go back in time and change the tune of my discussions to add more hope, because that is
Mm.
certainly what I've learned from you. Never to give up, but not like Don Quixote riding against the same windmill again and again, but rather saying, okay, fair enough. So maybe that windmill is not meant to be, but
Mm.
why not? Well, in your case, grow how many strawberries? That is a
Well,
hell of a lot of
5,000.
strawberries.
We'll see how they do.
Okay,
For,
that's
I've
good.
learned it's
I
more.
I had 120, so and I thought I was going over the top. But here you go. Who am I to judge?
Right. Likewise.
Oh, you're gorgeous.
Uh,
if if you were to tell our readers, our
mm,
listeners, our viewers, if you wanted to give them one parting message, what would that message be?
mm. I would say, with the presumption that you treat with that we treat other, I would want, there's a couple things. One is to treat yourself how and approach yourself and your own healing how you would support your best friend or your mom or one of your kids, and just to hold the same tenderness for yourself as you might hold for them.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
And the other piece is to um to just deepen into and to really, really listen to your own inner guidance and your own inner wisdom as you sit with yourself, because that's where the magic happens. And there's a lot of information, there's a lot of strategies, there's a lot of healing modalities, there's a lot of different doctors, there's a lot of noise in the world, and there's a lot of good that will really have a profound impact on you and your heart and your health and your wellness and your livelihood and your well-being. And at the same time, you know what will resonate most deeply with you. And I just want to invite you to trust that and to really, really listen to it. That's it.
Powerful words. Wow. Natalie, I'm so, so, so grateful that you shared all these beautiful insights. You changed my mind. You changed the way I think already now after, I don't know how long we've had the pleasure of talking, but you switched a few switches in my head which make me think and make me reevaluate my own path. And I so hope that so many other people listen to this and
Mm.
learn from you, because there's so much wisdom in your words.
Mm.
It's beautiful.
Thank you, Stefan. It sounds like I cannot wait to read your book. And it sounds like I want to learn from you. Yeah, I'm
You
really
have been there.
excited about
You've done
it.
it all. You've done it. Come on. It's just you're the blueprint. Without me ever
Right.
knowing you, you're the blueprint how to do it. And that is exactly what I
Right.
do in my book. I describe action plans that you have put into action way before I wrote them. So, and that's
Oh, I
beautiful.
love it.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely no. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
So.
you. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for the conversation.
Oh, please, yes. Guys, I'm going to put all the links to Natalie's TEDx talk, which is a most beautiful thing to watch. And every link that to her beautiful work that she's doing now will be below us here into the comments and in the description of this podcast. So check her out, see, learn more, and take stories like Natalie's as what they are. They are blessings. They are beautiful things in disguise that hopefully trigger something in us to change our own path and to have the faith and the resolution to take that step into hopefully the right direction and
Mm,
keep going and take another step and don't give up and just keep walking. Yes, you're in the middle of darkness, you're in the middle of knee
mm,
deep in shit. Keep walking, keep walking. And
mm,
you may very well be surprised where you end up. And the chances are it's not knee deep in shit. It's chances are that you are finding yourself as a much stronger person down the line, probably a very different person down the line. But that person is likely to be the new and improved you, just as much as
mm.
Natalie is now the new and improved version. And it's lovely. So I wish you all a fantastic time, a fantastic day. Look after yourselves. And Natalie, again, thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you,
Bye.
Stefan. Bye
Take care.
bye.
Bye.
Big love.
Dream on.